George Norrie with you. Christopher Dunn, engineer with decades of experience. He was recruited by an American aerospace company back in 1969 and began as a skilled machinist and toolmaker and has worked at almost every level of high-tech manufacturing, from building to operating high-powered industrial lasers, including the position of project engineer and a laser operations manager. His Pyramid Odyssey began in 1977 when he read Peter Tompkins' book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid. His immediate reaction to the Giza Pyramid schematics was that this edifice was a gigantic machine. Discovering the purpose of this machine involved a process of reverse engineering that has taken more than 24 years of research. His latest book is called Giza, the Tesla Connection. Christopher, welcome back. It's been a while.
It has, hasn't it? Thank you very much, George, for inviting me.
And I've got to tell you, every time I talk about the pyramids, your name comes up from the guests, that you are highly respected, and they all talk about you.
Well, that's very nice of them. I definitely appreciate that. The subject of the pyramids in Egypt has always been a huge fascination around the world, and the subject of lost technologies or lost civilizations who were more advanced and had much better tools than what we find in the archaeological record has increased in interest. Many people throughout the world.
Back in 1998, Christopher, you came out with an incredible book called The Giza Power Plant, where your theory was that the pyramids were literally power plants. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, the Giza Power Plant had its... I started studying the pyramids in 1977, and Peter Tompkins' book, he asked the huge question. He asked the question, was there a lost science in ancient Egypt, and something that we have not been able to figure out? And his entire book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid, was focused on actually expanding on that question and introducing different researchers over the centuries who have actually asked the same question. So throughout his book, you learn about different researchers who propose different purposes for the Great Pyramid, such as the question, was it a geodetic marker because of its prominence and its size? Was it used to actually lay out the land? The other one was it a granary? And another one was it used as an observatory because of the shape and angle of one of the galleries, the Grand Gallery on the inside of the Great Pyramid? And then other speculations about whether the dimensions of the Great Pyramid had some significance, which, as we find out, they do from a scientific and technical perspective. But there was one group who were actually studying it and applying dates given in the Bible for certain activities to measurements within the Great Pyramid. There's a group, they call themselves pyramidologists.
Yes.
And it was so it has been long a subject of speculation and wonder about what it may have originally served to do. But one of the things that is prominent is the question that whether it was actually used as a tomb, and that even though that is the official story that we learn when we're in school, and the one that holds force today in academia, the tomb theory has become less and less prominent or less and less popular as more information about the Great Pyramid is revealed.
A lot of space for a tomb, wasn't it?
Well, if you look at the schematic of the cross section of the Great Pyramid, and there is an image on Coast to Coast website that shows the schematic. I call it the schematic of a solid-state power plant. But you can see that it really does not resemble any building that would involve constant human activity or even a tomb, because of the shape of the shafts and the passageways. It just really doesn't fit in with the concept of it being a tomb.
Christopher, when the book The Giza Power Plant came out in 1998, how was it received in terms of your theories?
Well, I think people generally. I was quite pleased and surprised that it was received positively by a lot of engineering types and technical types. Obviously, it was ignored by the established Egyptologists, and so it wasn't received at all by them. But for the most part, I thought it was fairly well received, much better than I expected. So I felt quite pleased with it. But a lot of thanks to its reception goes to people like you and other hosts who have taken an interest in it and discussed it on their media outlets, which has kept it alive. And surprisingly now, it was published in '98, and here we are 26 years later. And it's still cooking. It's still out there, and the publisher is supporting it, and new printings are done, and so that is quite remarkable, really, for what people might consider to be a fringe book, but and so it's doing extremely well. But the interest in it, and also in the Great Pyramid, and the information that has been revealed since the publication of the Giza Power Plant, it brought me to the realization that I really needed to write a sequel to it, because there were some quite remarkable activities that were going on in the, I'd say, around the late 2010s, they're like 2015 through 18 and 19. There was some remarkable activities that were revealing more information about the Great Pyramid.
Well, you called the new book Giza, the Tesla Connection. Tell me about the Tesla Connection portion.
Yes, I call it the Tesla Connection because when I wrote the Giza Power Plant, the concept that I had as far as the energy generation was kind of limited to the King's Chamber and the granite in the King's Chamber. And so, and I was looking at the shafts that were leading to and from the King's Chamber, which is a central chamber in the pyramid. That's where the energy was generated, and it was directed through the southern shaft to the outside. The introduction of new information from Dr. Friedemann Freund, who is a NASA physicist, he was doing research into earthquake lights with the objective of seeing if it would be possible to predict when an earthquake was going to take place, because usually when before an earthquake took place, he was noting that there was the creation of earthquake lights in the high places around where the earthquake, the ground zero for the earthquakes.
Was he pretty accurate?
Yes, I mean there was one place in Italy, I think it was called Aquila. The earthquake, there were earthquake lights in the hills around this town, and 10 days ahead of the earthquake. So if you would say that, okay, the earthquake lights appeared directly, or maybe up to 10 days before the earthquake happened, and then they continued through the event and then kind of settled down afterwards. But the interesting thing about his approach to it, though, was, first of all, I mean, he was using NASA satellites to observe the topography of the Earth, and so he was noting the lights around that were lighting up, and then monitoring the seismic activity in the area. Now, at Aquila, it resulted in a huge earthquake that where there was over 300 people who lost their lives, and there was quite a lot of consternation about why there wasn't sufficient warning to the population before the earthquake took place. So anyway, what he did, though, he wanted to find out what the source or what the physics was behind it, and why these lights were, what was happening in the Earth.
Were these like plasma lights, Christopher?
Sorry?
Are they like plasma lights?
Yes, I mean they were like the Marta lights. You have these like ball lighting, and any kind of terrestrial light show that you see is caused by some activity where electrons are released within the Earth and flow to the surface.
Right.
So what he found through laboratory experiment is that when you put igneous rock under stress, there is what he calls dormant electronic charge carriers, and when you stress those, the rocks turn into a battery, and then these positive holes will shoot to the surface, and they go to generally the highest place on the Earth's surface.
How do they get through?
They travel through the rock, and so that kind of coupled with the energetic activity around the pyramids, which has been talked about for a long time, that there is a certain energetic or electrical kind of phenomena around the Great Pyramid.
And Tesla believed that there was energy in the atmosphere that he would tap into, right?
Yes, I mean Tesla. The why I included Tesla was because there were two technologies that he was working on. He had actually completed one or succeeded in one, and that was the earthquake machine. And then the other one was his Wardenclyffe Tower, which was never brought to completion. But the Wardenclyffe Tower was proposed to be able to broadcast electricity wirelessly, so that you could actually receive it without having to have a wire or put it on a meter or anything like that. He envisioned free power for everybody. So the interesting thing about the Wardenclyffe Tower is it has kind of like a dome which radiated the electrons out. So in the Giza, the Tesla connection, I proposed that perhaps, with the igneous rock beneath the Giza plateau being stimulated to release those dormant electronic charge carriers and have them shoot up to the surface, they would actually be attracted to the pyramids and move through them and into the atmosphere. And so then they would be collected in a kind of a dome, a cage around the Great Pyramid, and radiate out.
Like a capacitor?
Well, it'd be more like a broadcaster, right? So you have the electrons moving through the frame and then radiating out into the atmosphere. So they wouldn't necessarily be held, but they would actually be broadcast.
Now, how did they use this kind of energy?
Yeah, that's always the big question, George. I mean, and I would say that they could use it for whatever they wanted to. They had the ability to build the Great Pyramid. I mean, they could do whatever they want. I heard a architect. He said that the great builders of the Great Pyramid, they could build whatever they want. They could do whatever they want because the intelligence, the physics, the science that was encoded in the Great Pyramid is so sophisticated that you have to ask the question: what else was available to them? We're just left with the skeleton of a civilization, but what else did they have?
And with this new work, Christopher, you haven't changed your mind about the Giza power plant, right?
No, not. I mean, fundamentally, I still hold that it was used to generate energy. The how it did it, the mechanisms have changed slightly, greatly actually, when it comes to the source of the electrons, because as it turns out, with Freund's discovery, they call it the Freund effect. That with his discovery, it becomes even more significant.
Hold on for a second, Christopher. We're at a break. We'll come back and chat more. His latest work is Giza, the Tesla Connection. His website is gizapower.com, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. He also sent us some images, which Lex has posted in the highlight reel. Take a look at those. Acoustical Science and the Harvesting of Clean Energy. His website is gizapower.com, linked up at coasttocoastam.com. He's also got a presence on Twitter X, Facebook, and Instagram as well. Christopher, what happened to the technology? It seems to have been lost. Where'd it go?
Yeah, I think that is the $64 million question.
Yeah.
I think most people now are coming to terms with the strong probability that there was a cataclysm that happened in prehistory that brought a very advanced civilization to an end. That seems to be taking hold even in Egypt, with those who are now beginning to recognize the technology of the pyramids and a lot of the other artifacts in their country. So I would say that the end of a civilization brought to its knees by an incredible cataclysm. probably visited to the Earth from the outside. I mean, you have the different perspectives on what this cataclysm looked like the Younger Dryas effect, the many other kind of impacts that have happened or disturbances that have happened over the years.
Could this have been the flood of Noah?
I would certainly say that there would be enough upheaval with these impacts that they would cause massive flooding, and disturbance. I mean, it would be quite dramatic, and definitely, there will be tales of floods and earth movements and different phenomena around the world.
What would our good old friend Zahi Hawass say about your theories?
About me?
Yeah.
Well, actually, George, I have no idea. I've never bothered to ask, and I don't think I should. Actually, I probably wouldn't be pleased with the response. I've met Zahi a couple of times, but I've never gone into great detail about my work with him because I know that it's not going to land on receptive ears, if you know what I mean.
Right. No, I agree with you.
And so, we've met and conducted business, and that's it. But generally, I stay away from anything controversial around him. He has his ideas, and I have mine, and he's welcome to them.
If it was indeed a power plant, what do you think it powered up? Did they have electrical appliances?
Yes, I see. I mean, the thing is that when you have a power source, generally you don't build a massive power source if you don't for nothing. You definitely have customers for it and a need for it. So, I mean, just imagine in the future,
and it was wireless, wasn't it?
If we get really serious about converting our society over to more of electric than fossil fuels, which that seems to be a huge issue right now, and the issue really is, are we producing enough electricity to handle all the tremendous need for electricity? If we decided to say, okay, by 2035 we're going to be at 25% electric cars. I mean, just that percentage of electric cars would be a tremendous draw on the power grid. So where do we get the electricity? Where's the new generation? I mean, we can't build nuclear power plants that quickly, and even coal-fired power plants. I mean, they take decades to build now. So I mean, if I would love to see a car manufacturer invest in their own power systems in order to power their vehicles into the future. And so if I was stretching my imagination a little bit, I would say that maybe the future would look like you have cars that receive energy wirelessly rather than having to hold it in a battery or be charged by a battery, and that wireless electricity is drawn from the lithosphere and radiated out through a Tesla-like Wardenclyffe Tower device, or maybe a pyramid with a dome on it that's drawing energy from inside the Earth.
We talked.
So it's very futuristic. But then the other aspect to that is when we look at the past, and I was born in 1946, so 78 years ago. The world was a lot different than it is today.
Sure was.
With what is available, that's how we used to listen to music, radios, television, just about everything that you have has changed significantly. People born today, they wouldn't even recognize some of the objects that we were using, like an old dial telephone,
yeah,
and things like that. But and so when you look at 50 years of progress, and we look back 50 years, and you see the progress in technology that we've enjoyed, and project forward into the future, you have the possibility of even greater development and greater advancement. It depends, nothing is assured, but if we progress at the same rate that we did in the last 50 years, then the world 50 years from now would look significantly different.
Is it your thoughts, Christopher, your idea that whatever came from the pyramids was like a wireless transmission, beaming energy out to whatever usage they had?
Yes, I think that is one of the options. And I think that Tesla was the one person who kind of brought it to everybody's attention, and started to build the technology for it. Now, he didn't quite bring it over the finish line, but I think
they wouldn't let him.
Right, exactly. Well, they won't give him his funding, but I would say that somebody who wanted to pick up on that, another Tesla type person who has the wherewithal, both financially and intellectually, to do it, they would have to have a really strong belief, and also if they owned a car manufacturing company, then they would have a good motivation to.
Would his initials be EM?
Possibly, yeah, could be. So that's. No, it doesn't have to be. It could be one of the other majors. But I think the person that would do it would be another visionary like Tesla.
Who understands that? Absolutely.
So,
was there an ET presence then?
I don't know. I would. Is there an ET presence now? I think the whole subject of UAPs is fascinating in terms of the recent disclosure of the existence of these UAPs or UFOs who are navigating our airspace with impunity. There's no way we can match their performance. There's no way to catch them. But they do, though, give us a bit of a signpost, so. I said, hey, if you keep developing, you could be doing this. This could be you. You're not there yet, but keep it up, keep working at it. and so I asked the question. Okay, so we have this example of super advanced technology compared to us with these UAPs, and what would happen if there was a breakthrough, and then suddenly we were at that point where we had advanced enough to match that performance. But then what you have a flying object that is navigating our atmosphere, and seemingly without any jets or ramjets or just regular turbines and afterburners that spew fire out the back of it. It just seems to be able to zip off at great speed without any obvious means of propulsion. So, developing that technology where you can draw energy from the atmosphere and just move around quickly. And I think, a part of that being that you've also mastered gravity. You have control of the gravitational field. So, all of this is, I think, evident with these UAPs, and it's something that would be very beneficial to work towards, I think.
Christopher, on the cover of your book, Giza, the Tesla Connection, you have a graphic of a pyramid with a globe or sphere inside of it, a round energy ball. Is that possible?
That is, the cover of the book is the publisher's artist concept, and so it's not to be taken literal, but it's kind of like an artistic illustration. So it just illustrates that there's a pyramid and there's energy being generated on the inside of it, but there's nothing that is you could actually identify as being identical to what is contained within the Great Pyramid.
How do you think they knew how to harness energy from the atmosphere?
Well, they would harness it from the Earth and then radiate it into the atmosphere and then be able to tap into it there.
So it's coming up as opposed to down.
From the Earth and then radiating out. Now, as far as the UAPs, they are obviously powered by something, and there's all kinds of speculation about tapping into Earth energies and the electricity that currently exists in the atmosphere. Point energy has been discussed for many, many years. So I don't know the answer. All I can do is observe these activities and say, I wonder how they're able to do that.
If we were to harness this kind of power and energy today, what kind of things could we do with it?
Well, I think actually ultimately you would have greater capability. I mean, if you consider our capabilities today compared to 50, 60 years ago, you have to admit that we have greater capabilities when it comes to technology. And so, in terms of the future, another 50 years and further development, who knows what we would be capable of. I mean, the introduction of AI is, we still don't know what changes that's going to bring, but we can certainly argue that social media and the power of computers has radically changed society. Some would say not for the better, but I think it's kind of like growing pains with getting used to new technologies.
George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, along with Dr. Bruce Goldberg, who holds advanced degrees in dentistry, counseling, psychology. He conducts an international hypnotherapy practice in Woodland Hills, California, specializing in reincarnation, time travel, and soul healing. He's been looking into Tesla's spirit phone and some other areas. Dr. Bruce, welcome back.
Good morning, George, a.k.a. Texter Monterey. How are you? This is going to be a fun evening, or morning, I should say. We're going to be discussing reincarnation, and one of my heroes of all time, the late, great Nikola Tesla. One quick little aside here. Many years ago, Einstein was being interviewed by a magazine reporter near the end of his life. It was the early 1950s.
Yeah.
And the reporter asked him, he said, "Professor Einstein, can you tell me what it's like to be the smartest man in the world?" And Einstein looked at him, and in a rare fit of humbleness, he said, "I don't know. Why don't you ask Tesla?"
He was probably right about that, too. As these years click by, Bruce, we're getting closer to being Dexter Monterey.
I know. This is for the benefit of your audience, Dexter Monterey is a future life of George, which I was able to elicit through hypnosis, in which you're going to be hosting a rather large radio show in the future, wearing a one-piece jumpsuit on the Global Communications Network, GCN, with 300 million listeners worldwide, done in a mall-like complex where people see a hologram of you throughout the structure, and it's very successful. And you're going to be from Toronto, Canada.
Interesting. Now, what year might that be?
Oh, we're talking about 100 years from now. Let's say when I say 100 years, 2090... just around the end of the century. So we're talking about
70 years ago.
75 years from now, give or take.
Who knows? If I keep taking my supplements, maybe I'll still be here for real. I'll get to see the future me.
You're going to be over 6 feet tall with sandy hair, clean-shaven, blue eyes, and an athletic physique. You're going to look like Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
No, you mean my mustache is gone?
Well, yeah, this is interesting. I didn't see that. It was you were clean shaven, so you could play for the New York Yankees.
Tell us a little bit about your hypnotherapy practice. How'd you get involved in that?
Well, I have, of course, 3 degrees. One, the most significant one at the time, was my dental degree.
Yeah.
And I was using hypnosis for medical reasons, dental apprehension and pain control. The main reason why people keep away from a dentist is because they're afraid and fear.
Sure.
So I used that, no problem. I had read the Bridie Murphy story about a documented case of reincarnation in the 1950s in Colorado, and I decided, just as a scientist, experimenter, just to see whether hypnosis could actually elicit a past life on a young woman that I knew at the time. I didn't know her very well. I just met her. And she said, "Sure, you can experiment on me." So I took her into about 10 different lives, which was great. But more importantly, she overcame 2 habits and a phobia that I didn't know that she had because I had just met her. And so I saw the clinical application of this. And now we're talking about 49 years later and about 35,000 regressions and progressions later. That's where the rest is history, as they say. So I went from reincarnation, past life regression, to future life progression, developing that field, then into UFO abductees, out-of-body experiences, and finally time travelers from our future. So that's the progression of my work as it is today.
I witnessed you doing that on one of our Beyond Belief television shows years ago.
Right, yes.
To
in
that
fact,
woman.
I took you into a future life, too, on one of those shows, if you remember.
Yep, absolutely.
So anyone, the whole point of this, anyone can do this. In fact, I know your listeners, when I do the show, they always communicate with me. I do most of my therapy sessions by Zoom, by computer, so people don't have to come to Los Angeles to do this. But we're going to be discussing a little bit about just an overview about reincarnation and how people know that they've had past lives and how they can actually elicit them.
How many past lives does the average person have?
Now, this is where it gets kind of heavy. The average person literally has about 1,000 past lives.
1,000?
1,000. Now, I'm also including parallel lives. Remember now, it's not just one universe we're living with. We're living with...
Right. We'd run out of time with 1,000 lives on one planet.
And there is an unlimited amount, so my number is actually rather conservative. It could be an infinite number. But because you have all these... By the way, having 1,000 past lives, even if just 100 in this universe is relevant, is not impressive. You don't want to have many past lives. You want to be able to get done the karmic cycle as quickly as possible and ascend. So you don't want to repeat the same mistake over and over again. Remember, referring to Einstein, if you do the same thing over and over again, expect different results, you're crazy, you know?
That's a good point. But since you've been doing this, have you ever been shocked by somebody?
Well, I've been surprised. When I say shocked, I mean I've seen so many things happening. But when I see people overcoming major disorders, when I see people experiencing past lives that are just really exotic, time travels from our future, dealing with historical events at times, those things are pretty heavy. But most of the time, when I'm welcomely shocked is when I help people get over major depression, anxiety issues, habits, phobias, people who are able to empower themselves, be all they can be, as the old Army commercial is, and to get off medication, which, of course, is what I do. I never prescribe. I get people off of meds. So those kinds of things is and again, some of them are literally what we would call incurable diseases, like cancer, AIDS, and lupus. I don't do that. The patient does. I train them to access their higher self, which is perfect energy coming from the God energy complex, and they're able to resolve major issues like that. And that, to me, is a welcome shock.
If a person is afraid of swimming, does that mean in a past life they may have drowned?
Well, it could be. In fact, you don't die the same way twice. A good example is the late Jerry Springer. When I was doing a show, I took him into a past and future life, and in his future life, in his current life, he had a fear of water, hydrophobia, we call that, and a fear of heights, acrophobia, and past life had nothing to do with it. But in his next life, he's going to be a farmer from Montana called Montana Bobby, and going on sorties from the Earth to the Moon on a farm that he had up there, and one of the sorties coming back, his capsule crashes into the ocean and he drowns, and that was the cause of his current water fear. A future life, not a past life.
Interesting take on that. And what's your interest with Tesla these days?
Well, okay, so Tesla is not the car. This is the person. My interest in Tesla is because of what happens today. The U.S. Navy today has the most expensive and exotic and number one aircraft carrier in the world is the USS Gerald R. Ford. It's $13.3 billion is the cost of it. And on it they have a device called the Helios. Now, Helios is a very long, complicated name. You know how the military likes to use their acronyms. But what it is a laser device that actually knocks out ultrasonic, hypersonic missiles. So if China or Russia want to go after us with hypersonic missiles, they're going to have a problem with the Helios. Well, the Helios is a laser beam that comes out, and where did that come from? It came out from Tesla's research from, listen to this, 1908.
That's an interesting year. That was the Tunguska blast over Siberia.
Now, according to my research, indirectly, even though he didn't try to do this, Tesla actually was the cause of that. So would you like me to describe what happened?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay.
And what we think. Well, let me tell you what we think happened.
Okay, sure.
An object from space came blowing in and blew up over Tunguska, Siberia in 1908 and just annihilated the entire area.
Right, except there was no craft elements found. There was no depression, so it wasn't a comet. There are many of the scientific explanations that don't work. But let me tell you what is likely. And I know this is going to be strange, but bear with me. You know, I'm a scientist. Okay, so let's go back in time. On June 30th,
and is this Dr. Bruce Goldberg's theory?
Well, it is, but I'm not the only one.
Okay.
Okay. Understand? It's a theory that's out there that I like. I didn't invent this I didn't pull this out of my butt. All right. On June 30th, 1908, a mysterious explosion occurred in the remote area of Siberia called Tungsten. Okay, in Russia, Soviet Union at the time. All right, this blast flattened 80 million trees across 800 square miles. Every plant, animal, even insects were vaporized. That sounds like a nuclear explosion, doesn't it? The shock wave was felt as far away as England. And again, scientists assumed it was a comet impact. Mm-hmm. Of course, think of the Mexico comet that knocked out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Okay, but there was no evidence of any of that whatsoever. So this is what happened. Tesla was financed by J.P. Morgan at the time. Of course, his funding was pulled, and he wanted to get funding so he can do his research on electricity and all the free energy devices. So what happened was there was a man named Admiral Perry who was going to the North Pole. And Tesla decided that the way to do this is if he could get international attention, that he could get people to finance his research. So what happened is he developed what he called the Tesla gun. This will be known as the death ray, and you're going to see how it's relevant here in a moment. So what happened was he was going to shoot. He contacted this Admiral Perry, and he said, "Look, I'm going to light up the sky on your way to the North Pole." And so Perry said, "Okay, knock yourself out, right?"
Did he know who Tesla was at the time? Did Perry know?
Did he know what now?
Did Perry know who Tesla was?
Oh yeah. No, they were in communication.
Okay.
So this wasn't like he wasn't making this up. Okay. So what happened was Perry said, "Okay, do what you want, but whatever." So he's on. Perry is on. He's camping out at Ellesmere Island en route to the North Pole. So Tesla told Perry to watch the sky for a lighted signal originating from Tesla's lab in the North Shore of Long Island. Then a beam of light brighter than the sun shot out from the lab into the sky. And instead of a light that showed that Tesla designed as a massive wave of energy, 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb, by the way, that shot overshot the target. And if you look at a globe, it did shine up over the North Pole, but it went beyond that into Tungsten, Russia. Okay, so he actually didn't, because he didn't know how powerful this was. He actually his beam was what caused that explosion, that the equivalent of a nuclear detonation, even though it wasn't nuclear energy, it was electricity. So it wasn't a spacecraft, it wasn't a comet, it wasn't anything that we know. And you can't say it was an atomic bomb because there wasn't atomic weapons until 1945, and nuclear energy doesn't happen by itself. You can't have an explosion without perfect 100% pure water and U-235 or whatever. So this was nothing, and there was no crater, no debris found from a ship or any other device here, or any bomb, so to speak. It was done by pure energy. So this is what I think is the actual origin of the death ray that Tesla did. Now, what's interesting, when Tesla died in New York City, we think he died in January of 1943. All right, so the government, of course, immediately sealed off the hotel room that he lived in.
They took his documents.
And they, of course, they kept it from his relatives and his family. And do you know who was assigned to evaluate Tesla's research?
Who?
A man by the name of, this man was eventually would become the head of the engineering department of MIT. His name was John Trump, the uncle of Donald J. Trump.
Huh.
That's a true story.
That's a small world.
Small world is right. So the current Helios, by the way, Helios is the ancient name of the sun god from ancient religion. So I think the military is showing their sense of humor. By the way, this Helios device is also on aircraft, on the Air Force too, not just the USS Gerald R. Ford. It stands for the High Energy Laser with Integrated Optical Dazzler and Surveillance, and that's called Helios. And that is the origin, I think, of the device. And we're the only country in the world that has this. So if anybody wants to shoot hypersonic missiles, they've already experimented this. And by the way, let's say you're China and you want to use a hypersonic missile against our aircraft carrier or Taiwan or anyone else, those missiles cost tens of millions of dollars each, very expensive.
Of course.
Do you know what it costs for the Helios device? It costs between $1 and $10 a shot.
That's it?
That's it. To knock out a 10 million or 50 million, whatever it is, device. So just think of those of you that are old enough.
And it's speed of light, isn't it?
Yeah, but think of, if you've ever seen the movie Goldfinger, when
of course,
he's using the laser device on Bond, he's on this slab, and he says, do you expect me to talk? And Goldfinger says, no, I expect you to die. And they're showing you a laser beam. We had laser technology then. I've been in ORs with laser surgery, assisting in operations with my medical colleagues. So lasers have been around for a long time, but nobody has used it with the power that we have it on our Helios device. And that comes from Tesla's research. By the way, there is a estimate. Because of Tesla's work with electricity, supposedly 85% of all inventions that have happened in the last 120 years are due to Tesla's research.
I believe that.
Yeah. What can you do without electricity? What are you going to do? Light a candle and try to cook a pizza? I mean, everything is based on electricity.
Did he expect that explosion in Siberia to be as big as it was?
No. All he expected was, remember what happened in the Chicago World's Fair? I think it was 1893. He got the contract with that when Westinghouse was his sponsor. And he used alternating current versus the direct current of Edison.
What year did you say?
I think the Chicago World's Fair was, I think it was this one. I think it was 1893. It was before 1900. And that was an exhibition where they were showing the world, we got electricity and we can light up an entire world's exhibition, all the buildings and everything.
Sure.
World's Fair. And Edison, of course, was very jealous and not a happy camper at the time because he didn't like alternating current. And, AC is what we use.
He got into a fight with Edison over that.
Big fight. And you'll see also a fight with the invention of the spirit phone, which we'll talk about a little bit later. There was a war between those two. But anyway, my point to us is that Tesla showed his evaluation and his success in technology of using alternating current in the lighting up the World's Fair of 1893 in Chicago. And then, of course, J.P. Morgan, who eventually became a sponsor, had the first fully electrically powered house in New York City.
Tesla didn't really have any money to himself, did he?
Well, he was just he was taken advantage of. He was supposed to get, I think it was Westinghouse said, if you develop this, your technology, I'll give you $50,000. And Tesla said, okay, he did it, right? And then, or maybe it was J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan was a real crook. So Tesla says, okay, Mr. Morgan, I did it, so where's my $50,000? And he says, I was just kidding. Show me your written contract, which, of course, he didn't have. So he says, now I don't owe you anything. Take a walk.
Oh, geez.
So people just took advantage of it.
And $50,000 then would have been how much today? My God.
That would be it's about 7 or 8 times the value today. So it would be about $400,000.
Easy,
like
maybe even more.
So my point was that Tesla died bankrupt, basically. He had a lot of money for research. Everything was put into his equipment. He was, of course, into free energy, and the famous expression by J.P. Morgan was that Tesla says, I'm developing a free energy device, which, by the way, he patented in Colorado. There is a patent of one of his 400 patents, which is on free energy. And J.P. Morgan says, okay, that's okay, as long as I have the meter. Now, these were robber barons. They didn't give a rat's butt about the public benefits or about things like free energy. So whenever Tesla would come up with an invention, and he had over 400 of them, that would interfere with J.P. Morgan's or Westinghouse's ruthless robber baron, various businesses, they would just pull his funding. So that's what would happen with Tesla. But the guy, why do you think Elon Musk calls the car the Tesla? He doesn't call it the Einstein. He doesn't call it the Newton. He calls it the Tesla, the greatest mind. The only mind greater than Tesla, in my humble opinion, was Da Vinci. Da Vinci is recognized as the number one mind in the history of mankind.
And Tesla died in 1943.
Well, that's what we think. Some people think he was escorted out to London. There's a thing we don't really know, but the conventional wisdom is that he died in January of 1943 in his New York City hotel. And again, of course, the documents were all abducted, and people weren't allowed to.
You think he was kidnapped, Bruce?
Well, we don't know. I mean, you have to understand, this is why the government didn't like Tesla. Tesla, you understand, he was an idealist. When he developed the death ray, which he called the Tesla gun, you know what his philosophy was, what his strategy was? He says, hey, folks, I'm going to give this technology to every country in the world. And people would say, what, are you crazy? And he said, this way, you could wipe out armies, you could wipe out a city by pushing a button. He says nobody would ever declare war on anybody else if everybody had the technology.
Bruce, would you explain what a spirit phone is?
Okay, so basically it's a device that you can contact souls on the fifth dimension. You might say, like when you're in the fifth dimension, you're an ultra-terrestrial, is my famous term. Mm-hmm. This would be a departed soul, a lost loved one, or just somebody who's in between lives but occupying a spiritual body. So this was the war between, another war between Edison and Tesla. Tesla had a very weird experience which generated this. Let me just review what happened.
Sure.
Tesla was considering the possibility of contacting, spirits from the other side while experimenting with a crystal radio powered by electromagnetic waves in 1901. The signals he picked up one night were so unnerving that his scientific mind couldn't help but think of ghosts. He wrote in his diary, so let me quote just quickly here. My first observations positively terrified me as there was present in them something mysterious, not to say supernatural, and I was alone in my lab at night. So he was freaked out by this, and he didn't know what this was, and he decided to, using his brilliant mind, to come up with a device that would be able to record the sounds in more detail of people who are on the other side. And, of course, in those days, remember, spiritualism was very popular in the late 1800s and early 1900s, where people would go to seances. Remember Harry Houdini trying to contact his late mother?
Yeah, he was obsessed with that.
Exposing all the phonies, and that was the time. But there were some real people here. So let me go over the science behind it first, and then we can show you how this works. So scientifically, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. That's a basic law of physics, but can change from one form to another. If a living soul is a form of energy, we call it electromagnetic radiation, like this radio signal or computer signal, then after death it will always be in some form of energy. Okay, so it is expected that advances in electronic instrumentation will make it possible one day, but you'll see we have it today, not only to record the existence of supernatural events, but also to talk with them. And this is what we call today EVP, electronic voice phenomena. So that was the science behind that. There are two prominent ways in which supernatural is connected to electronics. First, there is the claimed connection between electromagnetism and ghosts. Ghost hunters claim that ghosts create electromagnetic radiation or consist of electromagnetic energy. Some people see ghosts on TV sets of a departed relative or answer the phone and it's a departed loved one. That happens, or let's just say it's happened a lot. It's been recorded enough. The second aspect here is a direct connection between electronic devices and the supernatural is often asserted. The most common form is what we call EVP, electronic voice phenomena, and this occurs when individuals claim that supernatural entities, ultra-terrestrials as I call them, especially spirits of the departed, communicate through static in electronic devices. So this is what's known as the EVP, which is very well researched today. It's been around for the last over 100 plus years, and Tesla was the first one to come up with this. So let me show you an example. Let's say that you go to a graveyard, right? And you have your phone and you're recording it. You just have it on, your tape. You want to tape something, or if you have a tape player or whatever you have, and you walk around the graveyard. You don't say anything. You don't do anything. You just walk around, and then when you're there for maybe an hour, you go home, and then you play back your device, your tape recorder or phone. Not very often, but occasionally you will get voices. Help me, I was murdered. You're going to get all kinds of things coming up, and that's because you're actually recording the electromagnetic radiation, which is what a soul is. Your subconscious mind or soul is electromagnetic radiation. So Tesla was brilliant enough to say that, hey, if it's electromagnetic radiation, it's always there. And if it's there, occasionally we can catch it on tape.
Now, how do they connect with the other side?
Well, remember, the electromagnetic radiation is out there. It's like cosmic radiation or any other kind of radiation. So they're out there and they're trying to communicate with people on the earth plane, especially people who are loved ones. If a person has clinically died or crossed into spirit, as we say, and they're hovering around where they were last alive, which is very common, and they have maybe a grandson or a granddaughter or their son or daughter or a husband or wife or whatever, and they want to communicate. So they're sending out, they're saying like, help me, I'm here, or I need help. And they don't know what they're doing. They're just talking, which is telepathically, actually, through electromagnetic radiation on the astral plane, fifth dimension, and people can't hear them, but a device can, just like your radio, like a radio people listening to the show, or their computer or cell phones can pick up signals. So you can communicate with people across the world with a cell phone or a computer, right? Electromagnetic radiation. That's what all these devices run by. So why can't you communicate with a soul, which is also electromagnetic radiation? And that is the science behind, or the theory behind Tesla's work with the spirit phone. Now, let's get back to Edison for a moment.
I was going to say, was there a difference between what Edison was doing and what Tesla was doing?
Well, remember, Edison was always playing catch-up to Tesla. He knew that Tesla was brilliant and smarter than him, but he would never admit it, okay? So they had a rivalry. He said, if Tesla's going to do this, and this was well known at the time. It was reported by the media, et cetera. He says, well, I'm going to beat him out. So he decided to come up with his phone or his phone to do this. And what happened was that he set up a meeting with a bunch of psychics and mediums and channelers, et cetera. And he had this device that he created, what he called his spirit phone, and he set it up for a certain evening, and he was going to, there was media there, and he was trying to impress everyone. So his prototype spirit phone was put into test in 1920, and the mediums and psychics and scientists that were there, they saw this like a projector-like machine was set on a workbench that emitted a thin beam of light into a photoelectric cell. That illuminated cell was meant to detect the presence of forces and objects. People were sitting there for hours. Nothing happened. Edison died in 1931 without ever producing evidence of spirits, whereas Tesla's his spirit phone was the basis of the EVP phenomena that we have today. So Tesla won that war again.
Has anybody perfected the phone where they can talk directly?
It's not like, there are devices you can get today. You can actually go to Amazon and order a ghost meter. It's really interesting. They have these devices that will pick up electromagnetic radiation. So if you, it's commercial today. You can actually, you have to be patient because just because you're using a device like this, it doesn't mean that some entity is going to make you feel happy and say, hey, I'm going to communicate with you. But the electronic device today called a ghost detector or quote, ghost meter, which contains a circuit that can detect oscillations in the magnetic field. And these electromagnetic field meters, or EMF meters, are available commercially. Like I say, you can order them on Amazon.
Do they work?
Well, I haven't used them myself, but you can read the reviews on them, but they should work, but not necessarily every time you use them.
What happened in 1901 that scared the living daylights out of Tesla?
I roughly described that, where Tesla was working on one of his little experiments here, and he had this event or an observation that terrified him while he was trying to connect with one of these, quote, ghosts. He was sitting in his lab, and all of a sudden this signals that came up from his device, his crystal radio, and it scared the bejeebies out of him. And as I quoted him, he said that there was present something mysterious, supernatural, and I was alone in my lab at night. And he was just like really scared. It was like a psychic attack. It really wasn't.
That was the event of 1901?
That would be 1901, right? So that was that got him on the when he did that. That was when he started working on his spirit phone, and then the media got involved, and of course, then the media loves having wars between people that are competitors. Sure. And then remember, it was 1920 when Edison set up that little meeting with the quote seance kind of thing with his spirit phone, which failed. So that was 19 years later. So this was going on throughout the early 1900s while they were working on their other inventions and patents and, motion picture machine, the copy machine, and, all the things that Edison came up with and Tesla's developments, his patents. So this was around because in those days, remember, spiritualism was a major topic of what people would do. They would get together, seances, and they were all trying to mostly overcome bereavement from lost loved ones was the main reason why spiritualism became very popular in this country. It came in from Europe, but in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, spiritualism, contacting the spirits of the dead, was a major thing today. In those days, Tesla
was a very lonely person by design, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a germphobe. He's sort of like the Howard Hughes of his time. He would walk around like 8 times before he sat down for dinner. He would wash his hands 1,000,000 times. He would dress for dinner at this little restaurant he would go to. And
he'd clean his knives and forks like 20 times or something.
He was not very good. He was not a party animal, let's put it this way. Even though he was invited to a lot of functions, and of course he was the star. He was like having Elon Musk come somewhere. But he was a weird guy in that level. And remember, he kept pigeons. Remember, on the top of the building of the hotel in New York.
Right.
But he was a germphobe. He collected pigeons, which are the dirtiest birds you're ever going to see.
To eat, or what was he doing with them?
Well, he actually he was so involved with a particular pigeon that he wanted to marry the pigeon. It was really weird.
Jeez.
It was sort of like depicted. If you ever remember the Mel Brooks movie, The Producers.
Yeah, classic.
Remember the writer, the real weird writer who had pigeons on the ceiling of his hotel? That was they were trying to mimic Tesla with that depiction.
Interesting.
So, but he was, you understand, Tesla was a brilliant man who people would just put him in a lab and say, don't communicate with us, just do your thing, and we're going to make a lot of money, and we're not going to give you anything other than a certain amount of money for your
research. He died penniless, didn't he?
Yeah, he died penniless, and even though there were millions of dollars that came through his hands in the research, he put everything into his towers in Long Island, that he used for the Tesla gun or the death ray, as well as in Colorado, the free energy devices. Remember, these patents worked. You can't have a patent in the United States without demonstrating that it actually works. So his free energy device actually works, but nobody ever capitalized on it because of the robber barons and, the politics was against him. And remember, here's another thing about Tesla. He had this device. This is why the government was afraid of him. Even though Tesla was not an evil person, he had a device. Think of a transistor radio, maybe 4 inches by 3 inches, a rectangle, okay? Right? He could take this device with energy. He could put it on the side of the Empire State Building and bring down the building by energy vibrations. That's how dangerous people thought he was, although he wasn't going to do that. So let me show you what Tesla understood. Tesla understood the secrets of the universe, and this is what he said. And I'm going to show you how it applies to hypnotherapy. He said, if you understand 3 things, you understand the secrets of the universe: energy, frequency, and vibration. That's it. So in my hypnotherapy practice, I deal with the soul, which is electromagnetic radiation, or dark matter, if you want to think of it that way. I deal with accessing the higher self by raising the frequency, vibration, or rate of the soul's body by accessing the perfect frequency of the higher self, or the superconscious mind. In other words, my practice illustrates Tesla's research of the secrets of the universe, which is why my patients, not me, my patients do 99% of the therapy, and why they can overcome incurable diseases or depression, anxiety, bereavement, and all the things that my patients have done, and I'm very proud of that, but I'm not doing it. They are. I'm 1%. I'm sort of like the social director on the Karma cruise ship. They're doing all the work, but they have to be connected to the higher self. Just like Tesla connected people with his spirit phone to entities on the other side. Same principle. All deal with energy, frequency, and vibration.
Bruce, if Tesla were alive today, what kind of technology do you think he'd
Oh, my goodness. This would be Buck Rogers in the 25th century. If Tesla was alive today, you think the military would love him, by the way. My goodness.
Yeah.
This guy would develop devices that would put an enemy into a Stargate, into a black hole. I mean, this guy would be using more than just electricity. Of course, electricity would be his main thing, but he would be developing technology on the military use. Of course, they would take advantage of him in doing so. Remember, the military always gets first priority. When the Wright brothers flew the first airplane in Kitty Hawk in December of 1903, Teddy Roosevelt, who was president at the time, one of my heroes, by the way, fellow Scorpio, he sent a military advisor to watch that event because he wanted the military to use airplanes in eventual wars, which occurred in World War I.
Tesla died before the atomic bomb.
Yeah, he did, but he was also involved with the Philadelphia experiment, as I discussed last November on the show. So Tesla, it was Einstein that was actually more involved with the A-bomb than Tesla.
Had Tesla witnessed the atomic bomb, what do you think he would have said?
Oh, what he would say would be, first of all, he would be horrified by it, just like Oppenheimer said that was the worst thing he ever did, and even Einstein said, it was the worst thing we ever did because of the Nagasaki and Hiroshima explosions, I'm sure. But Tesla would look upon it as not as a weapon of evil. He would look upon it as developing it for nuclear energy. Nuclear energy today, with all the green people and all the people yelling and screaming about, fossil fuels, et cetera, nuclear energy is the cleanest and the most efficient and the greatest form of energy that we have today.
When it works, absolutely.
It's been working for decades. And, politically, people don't like it. But, it's a great source of energy. Tesla would have used it not for making military equipment or weapons. I'm sure the military would have gotten involved with him. He would have used it for nuclear power, for heating homes, etc. And he would use it for other ways in which, maybe for space travel. Using it for our crafts in our space force, that we have today. He would use that for a more positive way. But the military would have probably tried to coax him by using grant money to get him to develop more weapons, so that we could go from the A bomb to the H bomb to the Q bomb to whatever else involved. So that would have been his mentality. No, Tesla would have made this leaps like centuries ahead of time.
Ironically, we're doing a program on Oppenheimer tomorrow night, Bruce, and there's going to be a movie coming out about him.
Oh, really? Oh, interesting. But he was an interesting guy, because Oppenheimer, when he was in Los Alamos in New Mexico in 1945 with a bunch of merry men, as I call that, he regretted significantly, and I hope they point that out in the film. I haven't seen that and will eventually see it, but he was... he really did not like the result. He was very he felt very guilty about the deaths that occurred in Japan because of that. And don't forget, when they were doing the research, scientists were losing their hands, with the radiation, and there were a lot of problems in developing atomic weapons.
Bruce, if you were to regress Tesla, who do you think he was in past lives?
Oh, my goodness. He could have been Hero from Roman Empire, a 1st century A.D., who developed the steam engine 2,000 years ago. He could have been Archimedes, the Greek dude who was developed weapons that actually destroyed the Roman Navy when they attacked.
And he invented buoyancy, too, didn't he?
Well, the buoyancy is what you hear about like when you're in school. But he was a much more sophisticated inventor beyond that. He developed a device by taking like if you take a magnifying glass and you can burn an ant, like in a hot day, right? He developed these big circular glass things so that they would send out a fire or a beam to literally encapsulate the Roman Navy and because they were wooden ships, and cause them to be on fire, and that's how he protected the island from the attacks of the Roman Empire. So he was a absolutely brilliant person. He was brilliant. And then maybe go back to some of the astrologers from ancient Egypt who knew the earth was round and that we went around the sun, and the precession of the equinox. People who came up with that 2,000 years ago, 2,300 years ago. Those are kind of minds, because in reincarnation you tend to reincarnate with similar policies or talents that you had in previous lives. And by the way, just to let you know, do you realize this year is the 20th year that you and I have been interviewing?
Yep.
And next year is my 30th anniversary with the network.
That's fantastic.
So, this goes back a long way. So this is a reincarnation of our own here.
And you haven't changed in 20 years I've known you.
Well, I appreciate that, and like I say, especially when your listeners are so kind, they like the offers that I give them, and some of the things that I have on my website, so they can experience some of the techniques that we're talking about.
And we have that website linked up at coasttocoastam.com for you.
I've had several emails about this. Would you mind if I mention that offer that I always do on the show?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so the book Exploring the Fifth Dimension, if they purchase it from my homepage, not from Amazon, but from me, they will get a free CD called Fifth Dimensional Travel, and it will guide them out of the body and go into reincarnation, parallel universes, and all the things that we're discussing. If your listeners don't want to get the book or pay for it, but they want the Fifth Dimensional Travel exercise, they can, and if they don't have a computer, please, if you have a computer, everything is on the website. But if you don't have a computer, you can call my toll-free number, 1-800-527-6248, which is 1-800-KARMA for you, KARMA, the number 4, the letter U, and I will send you a free written exercise that will go into the fifth dimensional travel. And the first 200 callers will also get access to the Akashic Records. So they can do that from the homepage. My webinars that I do now, I do every second Sunday of the month. I do a webinar which includes a hypnotic exercise. July 9th is my next one. I'll be doing how to channel for yourself and others. And all the CDs and books, etc., are all on there. And my YouTube channel has over 55 videos, including a regression, a past life regression of the late Jerry Springer is on there. So they can view that and a whole bunch of other stuff that we talk about: past lives, future lives, time travelers from our future, and all the fun stuff.
Bruce, 30 seconds left. Tell folks about your website and your offer.
Okay, the
please.
website is drbrucegoldberg.com. If you order the Exploring the Fifth Dimension book, you get the free CD only if you order from my site. If you don't have a computer, call me at 800-KARMA-FOR-YOU, 1-800-527-6248. All the books and CDs and everything are on there. My YouTube channel has 55 videos. You can access it from the homepage. My webinars are every second Sunday of the month. July 9th is the next one about channeling, and you can do all the exercise that I'm talking about if you have a computer. They're all on the website, and a lot of articles on there and everything, including the regression of Jerry Springer and a whole bunch of other stuff. So a lot of stuff on there. It's all free, and it's all relevant.
All right, my friend. We'll keep in touch. Dr. Bruce Goldberg. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. Tim Schwartz, Emmy Award-winning television producer, videographer, is the author of a number of popular books, including, of course, The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. As a photojournalist, Tim has traveled extensively and investigated all kinds of paranormal phenomena and other unusual mysteries from such diverse locations as the Great Pyramid in Egypt, the Great Wall in China. He's a writer, editor, online newsletter, Conspiracy Journal as well. And here he is on Coast to Coast. Tim, I'm looking forward to this.
Well, thank you, George. As always, it's a real pleasure to be with you on Coast to Coast.
So Nikola Tesla, born in July of 1856, how did he manifest his incredible knowledge of electricity and everything else?
Oh, boy. Well, Tesla, he is probably best known as the creator of the alternating current electrical system.
Right.
Okay, that's still the predominant electrical system used across the world today.
Edison would argue it was him, but...
Well, Edison, there are a lot of people who right now they love to bash Edison, but Edison really, he made a huge contribution to the idea of electricity for households when he came up with the Edison DC current. Now, it wasn't nearly as efficient as Tesla's later alternating current system, but Edison actually had a DC system set up in Manhattan before Tesla even came to the United States. So, we do have to give Edison his kudos to what he had developed before Tesla. But, there was definitely a rivalry between the two.
Well, and Tesla came up with other ideas beyond just alternating current, did he not? He had... he wanted to extract energy from the atmosphere, but they couldn't figure out how to make money doing that, so they squashed that, didn't they?
Definitely. Tesla's, after he basically invented and created the whole electrical grid system, starting with the generating plants there at Niagara Falls, he thought, this is great, but how can I get this to people without wires? He had this vision that electricity and energy could be sent without wires, either transmitted through the atmosphere or
like Wi-Fi.
Yes, very much so, very much so. Wi-Fi, in fact, is basically came from Tesla's ideas. Right now, we have these systems where you can take your cell phone and charge them wirelessly. Well, that is based, even though a lot of people don't realize it, on Tesla's ideas. But the wireless system for electricity that Tesla envisioned, this would have been something on a grand worldwide scale, where there'd be a number of transmitters located all across the globe, and you could put a combination of an antenna into the ground and up into the air, and with that, you would have all the electricity that you needed. Of course, the transmitting plants had to generate this electricity. A lot of people believe that this was a free energy system. It wasn't. You still had to have a place that generated the electricity and then transmit it.
Would that have been healthy with all those electrical beams all over the place?
Well, the way that Tesla had it conceived, it probably would have been. A lot of engineers now, we still really don't know just exactly how Tesla had this plan. Tesla was, and rightfully so, a little bit paranoid about his ideas and inventions, and left some of the main points out of his, say, like his patents and some of his other papers, but him and his engineers knew exactly what they needed to do. So we're not quite sure how Tesla was going to do it, but Tesla knew how to do it. He would not have gone as far as to actually start building one of the first wireless transmitting plants there in Long Island.
If Tesla was able to travel in time and somehow was able to come back from the other side, what would he say if he saw a car and someone said, "Oh yeah, there goes a electrical Tesla"?
Tesla probably would have been, first of all, he would have been proud that there was an electrical car based on his name, but I think that he may have been a little bit disappointed because of a lot of his ideas still have not come to fruition yet. That the Tesla car is still somewhat inefficient based on what we now know that Tesla was coming up with. And Tesla also would have said, hey, rather than having a battery in this car, you could just pick up the energy this car needed off of a Tesla transmitter.
Now, let's say you've written 3 books on Tesla?
Probably.
At least, right?
At least, yes.
Where did you get the information on him?
The first information that I ever got on Tesla was when I worked at a television station in Dayton, Ohio. It was WHIO 7. And one of the things that we had to do is, like every couple of weeks, we had to go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is really close by. Talk with the press liaison, see if there was anything interesting going on the base that the station could do a story on. I mean, we did, gosh, like 6 or 7 news broadcasts every day. So we were always looking for stories. And Wright-Patterson was all too willing to help us out with non-classified bits of information. One day, the press liaison was going through his file, and he just made this offhand comment to me. He goes, well, we're working on some stuff from that mad scientist Tesla, but I can't really talk about it right now. And this would have been, like in the early 1980s. And that name, Tesla, Nikola Tesla, that just got to me. I'd never heard of this guy before. And, his name sounded kind of almost science fiction or maybe like a James Bond type of villain. So I started researching who Tesla was, and at that time, there was not really a lot of information out there about this guy. Because I worked in television, I was able to access sources, say, like the LexisNexis, to get some information on him. But really, it took a number of years for me to collect enough material to actually start putting a book together, and now, thanks to the internet and other sources, people are able to know a lot more about Tesla than I ever had the opportunity when I was a kid growing up.
Tim, how far ahead of his time was he?
Oh my gosh. We are still today discovering things that Tesla had already discovered and knew about back in the late 19th and early 20th century. So, that's how far ahead. And possibly it'll be maybe another, 100 years before we really get down to understanding completely the things that Tesla was working on and was brewing around in that fantastic brain of his.
He was born in Croatia, but when he died, he had incredible notes. What happened to them?
Tesla died in 1943 in Manhattan. He was living in the New Yorker Hotel. He had been there for a few years. Before then, because of his unfortunate financial situation, he had been forced to hop from hotel to hotel. A lot of the material that he had collected over the years, his notes, paperwork, possibly even some unpatented inventions, a lot of times were left behind in lieu of payment from these hotels. He would be forced to leave because he couldn't afford to pay for his bills. So, the hotel would...
They'd kick him out?
Yes. Oh, yes. And material that he had stored in their basements, they would hold on to and say, well, when you give us the money you owe us, you can get your stuff back. We really don't know how much material was lost in these types of situations. After he died, some of these places just chucked it, threw it away, or sold it in auction sales, not realizing what they had.
And these journals that you talk about in the Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, some of them were pretty dramatic, weren't they?
The ones that we have discovered so far, yes. And you have to understand that when Tesla passed away, there was a great interest, which, it's really ironic because Tesla tried so hard while he was alive, the last years of his life, to get especially the United States government and military to pay attention to some of his fantastic ideas. And it wasn't until he died that then everybody set up and took notice that maybe we should get a hold of this stuff. In fact, the Vice President of the United States at the time sent a telegram to J. Edgar Hoover saying that Tesla has passed away. We need to get a hold of everything that we can
before somebody else does.
Yes, and unfortunately, that had already happened. Several years before Tesla had passed away. Probably the Soviet Union, probably the Nazi powers in Germany had gotten hold of a lot of material that we now know of. It's unfortunate. We don't know just exactly how much was taken away from the United States by these competing world powers.
Didn't he have the information, or at least built a death beam that could take planes out of the sky?
Tesla had been working on this idea for a number of years, and a lot of people like to call it a death ray. And Tesla always said, no, this isn't a ray, because a ray only had a finite amount of distance, while he said a death beam, could go. He said that his death beam could actually knock aircraft out of the sky up to, say, 250 miles from its source. So this would have been what we now call a particle beam weapon. All right? Tesla conceived of this probably during his experiments at Colorado Springs, Colorado in 1899. So this is how far back this idea that Tesla had. And by the 1920s, he had it all worked out on paper. He had done some experiments in his laboratories, and he was pretty satisfied that this was a technology that was workable. And if he just had the funding for it, he could build an operating prototype. But again, nobody paid attention to him except the Soviet Union.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, it really is. Well, and we see this all the time. People have some really fantastic ideas, and they're ignored until really years and years later, after they passed away. Possibly somebody else rediscovers these ideas and inventions, and then makes it work, while the originator just everyone forgets about him. Tesla's just an excellent example of that kind of situation.
Where do you think his journals and notes are right now?
Well, a lot of them ended up in the hands of the United States government.
Are they locked up somewhere?
Some of them did. Some of them, over the years, some of them have just disappeared. They had been spread out to places like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, DARPA facilities. A lot of them, again, ended up overseas. I think that a lot of it has been forgotten about. Like you said, they've been locked away someplace. That whole compartmentalization, need-to-know type of situation, and then they've just been forgotten about. There were letters written to the FBI years after Tesla died from people wanting to know where this material was, and the FBI wrote, well, we don't know. I mean, it was the responsibility of the Office of Alien Property to deal with this stuff, so, your guess is as good as ours.
So, if somebody could get a hold of it and recreate it, some of his things, like the beam weapons and stuff like that, could they actually perfect it?
I think it already has been perfected. The Tesla's idea of a death beam, there was a satellite photograph taken over the Soviet Union in the 1980s of a facility, and this was published in, I think it was like Jane's Technology magazine. And some scientists were like, what is this? The military was looking at it, and they weren't sure. And then somebody said, this looks an awful lot like Tesla's particle beam weapon. And sure enough, that's probably what it was. The best speculation that they had at the time was that this was a Soviet operation, possibly based on material that was sold to the Soviet Union in 1936 by Tesla through a company called Armtorg that was located here in the United States. The Soviets were so happy with what Tesla had given them or sold to them that they sent him a second payment a couple of years later of about $24,000. Now, you have to realize that, back in the 1930s, that's a substantial amount of money. So, obviously, this was something that worked, at least enough that the Soviet Union felt that, hey, we need to give this guy some more money. We're very happy with it.
Tim Schwartz with us. One of his books is called The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla. Another one, of course, is called The Final Nail in Your Coffin. And, of course, he also has Men of Mystery, Nikola Tesla, and Otis T. Carr. Who was Otis T. Carr?
Otis T. Carr was a gentleman who, in the 1950s, came up out of the woodwork somewhere and claimed that when he was a youngster, he was a bellhop at the New Yorker hotel and got to know Tesla after Tesla had been hit by a cab and was severely injured. One of Tesla's great loves was going to the park and feeding the pigeons. He loved pigeons and would often bring them back, injured pigeons, back to his hotel room, much to the chagrin of the staff at the New Yorker. Well, Otis said that Tesla got him to that Carr was the guy to go and buy Tesla's bird food, peanuts, and things like that, and the two got to know each other. And Carr said that Tesla had given him ideas on Tesla's work with field propulsion.
Let's finish up on Otis T. Carr. Then I want to ask you about time travel, Tim.
Sure. Let's see. Otis T. Carr emerged in the 1950s from Baltimore, Maryland, and claimed that he had invented basically a spaceship based on the ideas of Tesla. Now, Carr said that any vehicle accelerated to an axis rotation relative to its attractive inertial mass immediately becomes activated by free space energy and acts as an independent force. Basically means that it could fly without conventional means of propulsion. So Carr went as far as to actually starting a company to build this craft, and it seems like that just as he was getting ready to bring this thing out, the government shut him down, saying that he was illegally getting people to buy stocks in his company when he didn't have anything to base these stock claims
Did they
on.
arrest him?
They tried to. He was incarcerated briefly, but then it just seemed to fall apart. No one is really just quite sure what the government's beef that they had with. Carr said that the government had a monopoly on spaceships, and they didn't want any competition.
Do you think he was the real deal?
I think so. One of Carr's engineers, a gentleman by the name of Ralph Ring, resurfaced in 2006 when Ring found out that there was a renewed interest in Otis T. Carr, and Ralph said that yes, this device did work, and that they had actually tested it a couple of times, and not only did it levitate, as we think of as anti-gravity, but it actually seemed to work on a time-space principle where it would disappear from one location and reappear in another. So, it's a fascinating story, and I've looked into it for a number of years. But again, with a lot of stories like this, you kind of hit a wall after a certain amount of time that it's difficult to penetrate any further than that.
All right, now what's the time travel portion of your book, The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla?
In the late 19th century. This was before actually Tesla had gone to Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was experimenting in his New York laboratory with rotating magnetic fields. And Tesla told a reporter for one of the local New York papers that while he was standing in the middle of this array, that he reached out to grab something, and there was an arc of electricity that is basically just like a big spark that came off of his Tesla coil and struck him. And Tesla was protected, but he said that for a brief moment of time, he felt like that he was outside of time and space. He said that he could see the past, present, and future all at the same time, which gave him some interesting ideas on how the universe works in cosmology.
Was he remote viewing? Is that possible?
I think it was more than that, though. I think that this situation actually did not physically, because there was an assistant there, working with him, and his assistant actually had to grab a wooden board and strike Tesla with it to knock him, out of this electrified
this force.
field.
Huh?
Yeah.
And the assistant wasn't about to go in it, right?
Oh, no. You went in it. I mean, the assistant wasn't dressed properly, didn't have the proper footwear to keep him grounded like Tesla did. If the assistant had just reached in and tried to grab Tesla, he would have been electrocuted and killed right then and there. But he was smart enough to grab a wooden board, which made sure there wasn't any conductivity then, and knocked Tesla out of it. Tesla said that this gave him some ideas on how time and space works, and that possibly using this, that people may be able to get outside of time as we know it. It was a complex theory that Tesla would later write about as part of his unified field theory, which unfortunately never got published. Again, I mean, we have notes, we have some recollections by Tesla on this, but the paperwork that he put down about his ideas has been scattered to the four winds.
Well, that's pretty dramatic stuff, though.
It is. It really is, and because of this, Tesla had some contradictions with Einstein's theory of relativity and how things worked. But I think that when it came to Tesla and Einstein, and now quantum theory, that you have guys who were kind of tunnel visioned and looking at cosmology in the universe and how things work from their perspectives, and rather than only one of them being right, I think all of them are right. It's kind of like the blind men who are examining an elephant without ever having experienced one before. One grabs the trunk, and and the other grabs his tail, and the other grabs his feet. Each has their own idea of what they're grabbing a hold of, and it's going to take somebody, and that may have already happened at this point, who knows, to unify all of these theories to give us a really good working idea of how the universe and time and space works.
What's the story about Tesla perhaps receiving signals from Mars? What's that all about?
When Tesla was in Colorado Springs, he was working. He had a number of different things that he was working on. He went there originally to try to develop his dream for the wireless transmission of electricity. He went to Colorado Springs because of the absolutely great thunderstorms that they had there. His idea at first was that possibly he could grab lightning out of the atmosphere and use that to power the world. And so he had developed a receiver, a radio receiver, that he could go and track thunderstorms, and see how far away they were and how close they were getting to his laboratory. So it's kind of almost like the movie Frankenstein, where you saw Dr. Frankenstein with big antennas and kites to try to attract the electricity. That was based on what Tesla was doing at that time. Tesla's receiver, one night, rather than picking up the sound of thunderstorms, picked up what Tesla said was an intelligent signal. Now, at this time, this would have been around 1898, 1899. As far as anybody knows, nobody else had radio transmitters on this planet. Tesla was the only one who had a transmitter and a receiver. Yet here
the only one, really?
Yes. Nobody else. I mean, you have to remember, at this time, radio was, there were a lot of people thinking about how it could be done, but nobody else had done anything yet. Tesla
so he transmitted and received just to himself, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So he was receiving what he called intelligent signals. It sounded probably like what we would call Morse code nowadays. But Tesla said that these signals weren't coming from any terrestrial source, that they were coming from space. And he speculated that they may be coming from Mars. Mars, was the poster child of.
Well, if it was, who was sending it?
Yes, exactly. And Tesla also said that he was very familiar with the sounds of other objects in space, the sun and Jupiter, and because all of these planetary bodies transmits radio signals. He was very familiar already, with these sounds. He said this was something completely different, that it was coming from an intelligent source. He said that he thought that he may be the first man on Earth to hear one planet greeting another.
Tim, don't you think if we had Tesla's journals and notes, that some group within this country would have tried to reconstruct all these things that were in there, from the death beam to the free energy, all those things. They would have built these things. I think.
Yeah, well, and there has been attempts, and I do think that there probably are, especially within, say, like the secret black projects of the military, where they have been pretty successful, especially when it comes to the wireless transmission of electricity. I had a soldier tell me one time, in confidence, that when they were in, this would have been the first Iraq War, that when they were in the field, that they were given backpacks that they were to set up, and these backpacks actually started producing electricity. And he speculated, and that's why he came to me, that somebody within a military unit someplace else was transmitting this electricity, and that these backpacks were then receiving it. He said these small backpacks, they were able to plug into them, and they were producing as much as electricity as they could draw from it. So this sounds to me very suspiciously like some kind of Tesla-based a wireless transmission of electricity. But when it comes to some of his other ideas, I mean, the mind just boggles what could be accomplished nowadays. And you've seen some engineers attempt to replicate Tesla's ideas, but because Tesla was paranoid, he had been ripped off, stolen from by so many people that he deliberately omitted information from a lot of his patent applications and things like that. So we really don't have a clear idea of a lot of these things.
Well, who's
like
to
point
say
A to point B on how some of this stuff is going to work?
You've heard of the story of our embassy people in Cuba, right?
Yes.
Who's to say that technology hasn't been perfected?
The military and the FBI here say that that Cuba's using a sonic weapon. I don't believe that. I think that it is an EM weapon, electromagnetic, that is based on Tesla technology. It has all of the earmarks of that. It's very similar to what was going on in the 1970s with the American embassy in Moscow, where they were being irradiated with various forms of microwave radiation. For what reason, we don't know. This happening in Cuba is very reminiscent of that. I don't think it's sonic. I think that is probably a side effect of some kind of electromagnetic microwave technology, either being used to like electronically eavesdrop, or even as far as to creating health problems in these targeted people for whatever reason. Who knows?
What does President Trump's uncle have to do with any of this?
Sure. Well,
and who's the uncle?
The uncle is his name was Dr. John G. Trump, and Trump was an electrical engineer with the National Defense Research Committee of the Office of Scientific Research and Development. He also worked at MIT. And the ironic thing about this is that Trump was working closely with developing Van de Graaff generators for his experiments in producing sources of electricity to power nuclear reactors at first. And while Tesla was alive, Tesla actually told Trump that Van de Graaff generators, were very inefficient, and that his Tesla coil would have been a lot more efficient.
He was right.
Yes, very much so. A Van de Graaff generator, Tesla said, and I guess that they actually had an experiment and proved this. You would have needed a Van de Graaff generator about the size of a railroad boxcar, and Tesla had a Tesla coil that would have been, maybe just a couple of feet high, that would have outperformed a Van de Graaff generator. But after Tesla had died and the Office of Alien Properties had seized his whatever truckloads of material that they could get a hold of and take them to the Manhattan warehouse, Trump came in, and it was his job to go through this paperwork to see if Tesla was correct, that there was valuable material in this. Trump looked at this stuff, and they had at least 30 trunk loads and probably another 50 piles of bundled papers that he went through. In less than 2 days' time, he wrote a letter following his investigation and stated that Tesla's thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production of wireless transmission of power, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results, and it is my conclusion that there is nothing of value here.
Probably not.